Welcome to the School Leaders Podcast. My name is Dr. Gastard Harrigan, the podcast for current and emerging school leaders, those who support and supervise them. You will hear from passionate educational leaders who are transforming their schools, communities, and creating positive outcomes for students. I will also share my personal reflections and tips from over 15 years as a school leader. Together, we will talk about how to level up our schools and leadership practices. Hello, welcome to the School Leaders Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Gastard Harrigan. Today, we have a special guest, Vince Dawes. He's a longtime friend and colleague for over 15 years as a fellow school leader and principal. Vince has led schools as a principal in both Florida and Texas. He's a phenomenal leader, and he has been instrumental in improving student achievement at all the schools he has led. Join me in welcoming Vince to the School Leaders Podcast.
Hey, Gastard. Wow, man, it's been a long time.
It's been a while. It's been a couple of years since we connect, especially since you moved to Texas.
Yeah, I've been in Texas for about 7 years, I think. About 7 years, yeah. I've been in Texas about 7 years.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience both in Florida and Texas, especially in Texas, since you've been leading. I know you've led several schools over in Texas.
Yes. So, I grew up in Florida. Went to the best HBCU in the nation, Florida A&M University. I'm married with 3 boys. Jaden, my oldest son, Jaden, is a sophomore at the University of Arkansas. Cameron is a senior in high school, and my little one, who's not from Florida, Asher, is a kindergarten. So I have a spectrum there. So I got into education by accident after I graduated and moved to Fort Lauderdale to get my MBA and JD at Nova. So while getting my MBA, I started tutoring second grade students at Cooper City Elementary in Broward County. So started tutoring second grade students, and the principal asked me to be a sub. And I said, hey, why not? I'm in grad school, get some extra money. So I started subbing, and then the next year she asked me to take over a third grade classroom. And the rest is history. So I taught third, fourth, and fifth grade at Cooper City Elementary, moved to become a behavior specialist. And the following year, I became assistant principal, and that's where I met you because you and I became assistant principals at the same time. And then I went on to become assistant principal at Forest Hills Elementary and Pompano Beach Elementary, and later became the principal at Pompano Beach Elementary before moving to Texas and becoming principals and a leader at several schools here in Texas, in Dallas.
Wow, that's awesome. You're right. We did become assistant principals at the same time. It's amazing how time flies. You know, it's interesting. One of the things you shared, which I've known you all these years, I didn't realize, you became the principal at the school you were assistant principal. So talk to us about that experience, shifting from the assistant principal role to the principal role at the same school.
So, so everyone would think becoming a principal at the same school you're an assistant principal it's easy. And such, it is easy because you don't have to, you don't spend that time building those relationships and earning that trust with the staff and the community, because especially when they advocated for you to get the position. So one of the unique challenges for me becoming the principal when I was already the assistant principal, that we were a failing school. So I didn't have to convince the staff and community and about buy-in of the things that I needed to change. It was more so of the outside, the upper leadership, because I was a part of that leadership that we had developed. I mean, that was there while the school was becoming a failing school. And so what I like to tell people is that I was the part of the leadership, and I had a major part, but I wasn't in the seat. And so you just have to step back and say, what would you do differently as now that you're in the seat? What things that you will change? And that's what we were able to do. And so I was able to hire a whole new leadership team, a new assistant principal that had curriculum background, two reading instructional coaches that had curriculum background and came from schools that saw improvement. And so, and changing the mindset of teaching was easy, and because it was a sense of urgency. And so that was the easy task. It's just convincing. I mean, so the easy task was convincing the staff about the sense of urgency. The hard task was just convincing upper leadership that I was the right person for that particular job.
It's interesting you said that because as you are speaking, you are correct that oftentimes if you are part of the administrative team that basically was leading and the schools was failing, often you don't get an opportunity to lead that school as principal. So if you could unpack for me maybe two or three characteristic skill set you think, if there's an AP emerging leader who's maybe in a struggling school and saying, well, I don't think I will never get that job. Well, you show that you have obviously made that leap and move that school. What are some of the skill set or some of the focus areas as an AP they should focus on, even though the school is failing, but they to show upper leadership that they can make that shift from assistant to principalship?
So I think you have to have a sense of identity, who you are, know who you are as a leader, and what can you bring to that particular job when you get in that seat, and like what are the changes you're going to make. And so you have to be reflective on yourself and things that be reflective on things that you know, but also be reflective on things that you need to grow on. And so I think the skill set for that for me is to just be reflective of yourself, and understand who you are as a leader and what can you bring when you become that in that seat, especially if you're taking over the same at the same school. Knowing what changes that you will are willing to make, and just be, just have that courageous attitude of what leadership change you're able to make as that school leader when you get in that seat.
That's key. You said that because at the end of the day, knowing who you are, being authentic, knowing your style, knowing the changes you are going to bring in, those definitely are key characteristics to not only to lead that school, but also to convince, obviously, upper management. So, with that experience, moving into a struggling school. And now you are a transformation, a turnaround principal. Share some of the lessons you've learned as a turnaround principal for maybe some of the colleagues and principals who may be leading a tough school, some of the nuggets and tips you've learned turning around that school.
Okay, so one of the things I've learned is not to um, not to send an email or a note saying "come see me." That's all the jokes aside, but I've learned that. But just being very reflective as a principal and a school leader. So always, um, so I always go home and be and reflective of that day, of what I've done, and staying focused on my vision. Um, um, l- but also learn to delegate, learn to share responsibilities, let go. I say let go, let them learn and let them grow. Build the capacity of your staff. And one of your jobs as a principal is not only to grow and improve student outcome, but also to grow capacity with the adults you lead.
I, th- I
Uh,
think I think that's key. Not to cut you off there. I think that's key. Being reflective, building capacity, because ultimately you're right. It's student achievement is the ultimate goal, but you have to build the capacity of your staff to be able to through them get the outcomes that you need.
mhm. I think also, Gastrid, you have to, in order to turn around a school, not only you have to build trust and relationships, which is key, change the school culture of that school, but also people want to know the directions you're taking them. So if you're leading someone, if you're the pilot of that airplane, what direction are we going into? So people just want to know. Teachers and staff, your school community want to know where we're going. And so I think that is to articulate and communicate where are we going, where are we heading with student achievement, where are we heading with professional development, where are we heading with processes and procedures, where are we going? And so I think communicate and articulate that, but not only communicate and articulate that, but articulate your why. Why are we doing this? Why are we heading in this direction? Why are we doing this for these particular kiddos? Why are we looking at data? Why are we doing this professional development? How is that going to um, improve student achievement? So people just want to know why.
And I think knowing your why and being a chief communicator is very important. Knowing your why and communicating the why consistently of why we doing certain things, why we looking at data, like you mentioned, being a data driven school and making sure we're using that data to inform instruction to now drive PD that we are asking you to go to, the why behind it, and why are we doing these PD that are based on the data trend and how we're going to impact student achievement. And what you just said is critical as leaders. And oftentimes I think leaders, we don't often consistently communicate, consistently share our core values, our why, and those things are very important.
Correct.
So if you could reflect and share with us, go back a little bit again, still back at your first school, your first year as a principal. If you could reflect one of the challenging moments you had and walk us through that scenario and share some of the lessons you gleaned coming out of that challenge.
So one of the challenges I had, so being that we were a F-rated school, um, so I had a new director, and also I had the state mandates. I had state visits. We had And so being a new principal and under a lot of pressure with, having different people coming into your building and doing walkthroughs and learning walks, and then reflecting on your practice as a leader, and then and just reflecting on those things. That was pretty intense. But I think just keeping track of knowing what you were doing. So we will have meetings after meetings. I will have different principal leaders, principal mentors from the district come in and do walkthroughs on my campus, and meet with teachers, and then just give us some feedback. And so, yes, at first I was like, "Wow, this is a lot. This is a lot." But I think what you do as a leader, you take that information and you take that feedback and you compartmentalize it, and you take the small bits and make those changes. And so we would meet and they would tell me, list of things you're doing right, list of things you need to change, list of things you're doing right, list of things you change. So as a leader, you can take all that and put it all on your shoulder, because at the end of the day, all that is fall back to you as a leader, right? So one of the things that we were able to do is look at our um, look at our mission statement, change our mission statement, look at our strategic plans, our school strategic plan, and okay, what do we need to focus on this year? What do we need to focus on this year? So our focus on this year was improve instruction delivery, making sure that our teachers understood TEKS. Sorry, I said TEKS here in Florida. And that's our state standards here in Florida. Texas. So understand the standards, Florida standards, and making sure that our instruction delivery practices were top notch. And so that was a lot of PD. That was a lot of extended hours. That was a lot of professional development with teachers, because we could not improve student outcome if we didn't improve student or teacher outcome. And so we spend a lot of time just on reflecting and on teacher practices and building teacher practices, improving teacher quality, hiring the right people, moving. So I did a lot of shifting, moving people around in different spots. That was one of my first things. And having true PLCs. I knew PLCs back when we started was a word, and we were just getting into it. But just having true PLCs, and just going through that PLC model and answering those four critical questions, but also looking at our students who continue to struggle, looking at data, and so we went through that list of, that quality of instructional practices and looking at teacher development. And so we were able to look at those and improve that aspect of it.
You said a lot in that, and I would like to unpack it. You said first you started with changing your mission statement. If you just share with us, why did you start with the mission statement?
Because the mission statement was, we felt that, um, so looking at so after I developed my, I don't know what they call it in Florida anymore, but we call it our school improvement plan, and your we call it site-based decision making team. I forgot what they call it in Florida now. Sorry, I've been gone for 7 years.
Oh, listen, that's fine. I mean, whichever state or district you're in is the same idea. It's some form of improvement plan.
Yeah, so I'm mixing our terms up, but we started with that and looking and having that team look at our mission statements. Okay, where do we want to go? Is this who we are? And this is our focus. And so just having that team and the leadership team look at that and bring that to the community, and it wasn't a big change, but it was enough change that we know where we were going. So that's why we started with that, because we had to start with our mission statement and our focus and our core values in order to improve uh, student outcome and teacher performance.
It's interesting because when I inherited my school with a lot of problem, a lot of issues, and you are correct. Within the first 2 years, I came in a little bit half in the year, and you are correct. One of the first thing I tackled was the vision and mission of the school, and partly is because within 90 days, about a school year. 90 school days, but about a calendar year, they had gone through three different leaders and three different focus, and I wanted to same thing, define why were we doing what we're doing, what is our vision, what is our mission, where are we going, and taking that whole collaborative process to make sure that we all on the same page, and really creating that shared vision. We took some time, but to all the leaders that are listening, if you're inheriting school, especially a school that have a lot of high needs, a lot of challenges, you want to make sure you go back to your why, which is ultimately your vision and your mission, making
Mhm.
sure that everyone in the building know why they are there, and making sure that if you're going to create a new vision, a new mission, it's collaborative. For me, I started school wide, including everybody, including the custodial team, clerical team, making sure everybody had a voice at the table. Then we took it further to small groups, leadership groups in each of the levels. And then from there, I pulled the leaders to synthesize it. And at the end, I brought it back to the staff wide. And together we craft, synthesize, and really selected our vision and our mission. And you mentioned also focus area. They end up picking, not really they did, about 3 to 4 areas. Because you did a lot of work around PLCs before PLCs was what it is today. So
Mhm.
talk to us about how did you select your focus area? How did you come about, focusing on those specific instructional focus areas? What was the process?
So I don't I can't remember back then because I've been about 7 years ago, but I can tell you how what I do now. Um, and so so at my current school now here at Big Springs, at the beginning of at the end of the year, they staff took a survey, right? They took a survey, and I reflect over the summer. Then I met with my leadership team, and then I came with. I had my own core values or sorry, instructional focus items that I wanted to focus on. But at the beginning of this year, um, I we started with like who are we as a campus, where we want to go, and then list some things that we needed to. And we looked at the survey that they did. We looked at the parent surveys. We looked at community surveys, and we just looked at those different surveys and pulled out different points and like, okay, what are some of the instructional focus that we think we need to work on? And we know we were we didn't do really good in small group instruction. We didn't Our academic vocabulary was a instructional focus, and those are some of the things that I had already had my own little internal list, but they came up with. And so those are some of the academic vocabulary. We science was a focus for us because of our data, and so just looking at the data piece of it, and so those were some of the things that came out from the staff. So they had some buy-in of creating those instructional focuses. Um, but I gave them the tools and that they needed to use a lot of us based on some of the surveys that they had already created from themselves, and also our current data and our current reality. And so they were able to pull some of the things out, and they pulled some things out that I didn't even pull out, just myself. And we created the instructional focuses. And so we always start every faculty meeting, every PLC. What are our instructional focus? Are we going back to our instructional focus? Does this tie into our instructional focus? One of the things that one of our focus, our main focus, or it's not a mission statement, but it's our main focus this year is every student every day. And so all the decisions that we make, that I have to make as a leader, all the decisions that I have to make, anything that someone brings to me to make a decision on, or any question, I go back to every student every day. Every student every day. Does that answer every student every day? Does that relate to every student every day? Can we do this? Is that every student every day? Oh, I don't like coming to PLCs at this time. Is that talking about every student every day? We have commitments that we created. We have about 9 what we call commitments, and it's like what we believe in, what we promise to do as a faculty, and we always go back to that commitment. And those commitments can change. Those commitments can change, and we revisit those commitments and make sure that do we need to change this? Do we need to are we still okay with this commitment? So if one of the commitments is building relationships with our students, have we been doing a good job of building these relationships with students? Classroom management, or in tier 1 instruction, do we need to come back to that? So that is the focus, but we always go back to that. And the reason why we go back to that, because you as a staff help create those commitments, you help create that focus, those instructional focus. So we can change it, but we need to change it as a group, as a faculty. So they had some buy-in to that, and so but we always go back to it and making sure that all decisions, everything is centered around that.
I think that is awesome. Creating those commitments and ensuring that the decisions and the decisions that are being made are tied back to the commitment. That is awesome, and tied back to does this benefit every kid every day? I think that is awesome, and those are key things. I think school leaders and principals need to ensure they having their core commitments or values, and making sure that they're sticking to them. And I think one of the key thing I took away from what you're saying is making sure that it is collaborative and that staff are part of the process. So now they buy in into the vision, they buy into the direction you are heading. That's
Because
awesome.
I easily could have written down these instructional priorities and these commitments and our core values or whatever. I could easily just wrote them on a page or put it on a PowerPoint and say, "Okay, this is what we're doing." Right? I can do that as a leader, and this is what we're doing. But would I have the buy-in um, to it, right? Because you have to hold them accountable, because this is what we agreed to as a staff, as a body. And it wasn't just teachers, it was my paraprofessionals, it was my secretary, it was everybody involved. So does this, even when it comes to budgeting, I need to buy this. Does that answer every student every day? That is
No,
that
no, no.
does that answer one of our commitments? And so it's easy to say yes or no, and easy to, okay, that's where we're going, right?
No, no, you spot on, and I think for all the leaders and the principals listening, that is key. It does take time because you got to craft in the time to have the staff have a say so and go through that collaborative process. But it is key, as Vince just indicated, because then you could always go back to this is our commitment. This is what we said as a staff. This is what you said as a staff that you wanted that we were going to focus on, allocate resources toward, spend money on. PD, the direction. So yes, it does create that whole buy-in, and it makes it easier in the long term, as you indicate. You could have just created it yourself, but by creating that buy-in and having the staff involved, then you could hold them accountable because it was their choice, it was their commitment
and
as
it
part of
and
that.
it makes, I'm sorry, it makes conversation much easier. It makes hard critical conversations much easier.
And that is key. On that same note, these past 2 to 3 years, or even 4 years now, all schools coming out of the pandemic, and now most of us have transitioned to basically normal. If you could reflect coming through while you were leading through the pandemic, some of the challenges and how you navigate some of these tips. I always like to go back and reflect on those tough times because those difficult times teach us key lessons, key takeaway we could draw from them. So if you could reflect back and how you navigated during these challenging time for all of us as school leaders, and share some tips for principals that are listening while the pandemic is over, but they might be leading a difficult or challenging situation or school community at this moment.
So that's a really good question, and I call myself the pandemic principal because I started this school during the pandemic. Like this, I was a first year. I wasn't a first year principal, but I was a first year principal at a new school, but during the pandemic. And so I had to. So one of the challenges for me, I had to not only learn the district, but also navigate this new staff through a challenging time, and they didn't even know me. I mean, they had all they knew was my name and my Twitter account, right? And so, but I had to come and like get information from the district and lead this community and this staff through a pandemic. Like my first faculty meeting at this school was through Zoom. Like my first introduction with this staff was through Zoom because you couldn't come in the building. I was the only person in the building. My assistant principals and myself was the only people in the building, and so I had to lead this staff through Zoom and let them and tell them we're going to go virtual for this amount of days, and you got to come up and get this. So me being the new principal, so if I was not an experienced principal, I think I would have had a difficult time. But I lean back on what I know best, and what I know best is build relationships. So I did everything to send positive notes, send things to their house, had things lined up outside for them to pick up, organize everything. So I had to build that relationship through Zoom, and so for any principal or administrator that's going through a difficult time or leading a difficult school, I think the first thing you have to do is find a way to look at your culture, build that culture, build a positive culture through building positive relationships and trust. I know everyone says that, and you'll hear a lot of different leaders saying building relationships and building trust and building culture, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to be very intentional about those relationships and that culture you're trying to build. So being a successful principal or leader, you must be willing to learn and grow and be reflective and adapt. So just making sure you're adapt to change, you're and necessary change, and you also have to be comfortable with uncertainty. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty and make the shifts. So when you see shifts, you have to be able to look at that and say, okay, we need to change and navigate through that. We need to make this shift because every shift is not going to be popular. Every shift that you make and every change that you make is not going to be popular. But if you surround yourself with effective leaders, people around you, you're not the expert. So you have to recognize that you're not the expert, but you surround yourself with experts that's going to not only grow you but challenge you and help you make decisions. Um,
I think you're spot on. I think oftentimes leaders, we are not adaptable, and we don't we want to control everything, and it's okay to adapt, it's okay to shift. In fact, you have to learn to shift, because I like to tell leaders, and in particular my leadership team, if you look at education, every 7 to 10 or maybe 12 years, things are changing. You have to be a growing leader, and yes, you have to be okay with not being okay,
mhm.
because sometimes you can't control every decision, you can't control every and often decisions are made for us, right? The initiative that are made for us is how we implement it and carry it out, and that becomes key. What you just said, you're right. Oftentimes we say relationship, but it is all about relationship. In fact, I like to say it this way. In real estate, they talk about location, but really, and leader and leading, it's all about really building relationship. Yes, you need to know yourself, you need to be authentic, but it's also about, if you're going to lead people, you got to get to know them and build those relationships and be adaptable and be that change leader. You got to be willing to grow, innovate, and try different things.
And I also say, especially for the new principals or administrators out there, there's going to be a lot of things that come from up top. And when I say up top, from the district level, and you're going to have to communicate that to your school. Before you communicate whatever is coming from up top, think about it, compartmentalize it, reflect on it, and how you're going to deliver it. And you never say, "Oh, well, it's the district, it's the district, it's the district." No, so you never throw the district under the bus, or you never say it's the district. You say, okay, how is this going to benefit my school, and how do I communicate that so we can move this initiative or move this way or go this way? So, and that's a lot of people get in trouble by saying just blame things on the district. So I don't know if that answer was in your question,
No,
but
no, no, I think that's key because oftentimes you are correct. We shift the blame, and on that same note, and not throwing your district or your boss under the bus. Another thing is also, if we could take the assistant principals that are listening or emerging leaders who how do give some assistant principals or emerging leaders some tips of how do they support perhaps their principal in a direction they feel may not be what they think is the best direction. How do they navigate that and ultimately be successful at supporting their principal and being successful?
so I've had the privilege of um, I have two assistant principals now. One's brand new. One's been with me for 3 years. I've had other assistant principals in both Broward and in here in Texas, and I think four of them have become principals. And I think the one thing that I always tell them is to support your principal no matter what. If anything that's ethical, you're there to support your principal. You and I both were there, and then make little side notes. When I become a principal, take the good, the bad, and the ugly from that particular leader because that person is in charge. So you just make little notes to yourself, like, well, I might do this a little different. And when I get in, I might do this a little different, but you don't do it differently when you're the assistant principal because you're supporting that particular person. You just make little side notes like, hey, this I might do that a little different, but also have honest conversations with your principal about. And this also goes on the principal side too. Um, you're building the capacity of your assistant principal, so that relationship has to be honest and reflective on both sides. And so I challenge my assistant principal behind my door. Let's duke it out. Let's figure this out. But when we go outside, step outside, we are a united front. We are a united front. Now, I'm gonna be transparent. I have been guilty of getting upset with my assistant principal, but I'm reflective. Just and so I'm really transparent. I have gotten on my assistant, not got on them, but just telling them, I wouldn't do it. We're not going to do it this way. But you have to be reflective. And I'm reflective. But I think for the assistant principal, make sure that if you have something to say, or you have a different opinion, or you have something to give, you talk to your principal, and hopefully your principal gives you that opportunity to do that. Right now, I had to. My assistant principal, the one I've been with for a long time since I've been here at Big Springs, he is like my second person in charge, right? And so I've given him a lot this year. A lot. I've taken a lot off my plate, but I give him a lot because I'm trying to grow him because he's trying to become a principal. And I had to recognize that, and I had to have conversations. My first year, my second year, I don't think you were ready. Now you're ready. And so here are the things I'm going to do for you. And also for assistant principals, talk to your principal about your goals. What do you want? Or what do you want to do? How do you want to get there? And how can that principal help you get there? If you want to be assistant principal for whatever, for how many years, let them know. But these are the things that you need to grow in. And so you just be having that honest conversation. But I can say for the assistant principals, you learn from your principal, but you support your principal
And I
at
think
all costs.
Yeah, I think what you just said is key. You learn from your system, from your principal, and you support them. And what you just said is invaluable. You support your. I always like to say, if you can't work for that leader, if you can't support them, then you really need to transfer or go to another school. But a lot of things you just said is very very important. That, like you just said, it's the same philosophy I have. I used to have two assistant principal. Now I have one, and it was the same thing behind closed door. Say, be transparent, be honest. I'm going to be honest and transparent. But when we leave the office, we are going to have a united front, and we are going to implement whether it's my idea, your idea, as if it was your idea, or
Mhm.
as if I'm going to implement your idea as if it was my idea. And that's very important, because at the end of the day, the leadership is small. At the top, I like to say it's very small. And as a leader, or soon to be principal, it's very important you understand, you're going to be in the seat. And it's easy. When I was an assistant principal, I used to say, "Man, I wish this is what I would do. This is what I would do." Until I got into the seat and I realized, oh,
Mhm.
this is why they do what they do.
Mhm.
This
Yeah.
is why sometimes they are playing chess and not checkers, right? And until you sit in the seat, you don't know that. And I have to say, I have great mentors. Mentors become important. One of the experience I had was at one of the tough schools locally, and one of the experience I had was every so often my principal would just basically, even if she was in the building, act as if she's not in the building. I was the acting principal for that day. So even if their district office call, she would say, "No, I'm not here. Give it to Harrigan," and that allowed me. And she said, "Go ahead and make some decisions. You're gonna get something wrong, something right. I know. Don't make any budget decisions. Those are reserved for me. But run the school as if I'm not here," and that allowed me to get comfortable making decisions
Mhm.
while I'm still in the assistant principal role. The other thing you said, and I think it's critical, is to speak to your principal, to share your dreams, your goals, areas you want to grow. So, especially if you're at the secondary level and you may be over disciplined. While discipline is wonderful, discipline is not necessarily what's going to get you to be principal. Have a sit down conversation with your principal and say, "Hey, I've been over discipline 1 year, 2 years, or whatever it is. Now I would like to be over X, Y, and Z to help me grow."
Mhm.
Or what are areas that you think I need to develop? And like you just indicated, you've provided a little bit more experience and responsibility this year to your second in command, because those experience are what's going to prepare him for the next level for principalship. And I think that is key, that as assistant principal, you do not wait for your principal to come to you. You go to them and share with them how you want to grow and where you want to go.
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Vince, for taking time to come on the podcast. As we end, share with us your favorite book or quote and why.
So, one of my favorite books. So I know good friend of ours, a good friend of ours shared that John Maxwell, and John Maxwell is a really good book. I mean, author. Um, but one of the books that I like from John Maxwell is Leadership. So it talks a lot about how do we shift as a leader. And something I pulled out of the book, and I keep going back to it. Every advance you make as a leader will require a leader shift that changes the way you think, act, and lead. If you want to be an effective leader, you must leader shift.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah,
Love that quote.
yeah.
That's powerful.
So I go back to that. So anytime that we think about, anytime I need to make a leader shift, not leadership, but leader shift.
And that's key. And that's key. So thank you for coming on the podcast. Tell all of our listeners how they can connect with you.
Yes, I'm on Twitter. You can connect with me at Principal Dawes, or Vincent.Dawes at risd.org.
All right, awesome. For everyone listening, I will put that in the show notes for how you can connect with Principal Dawes on Twitter. Thank you so much, Principal Dawes, for coming on. Truly appreciate your friendship, and have a wonderful day.
Nice spending time with you, my old friend.
Thank you for joining me today. Please consider subscribing to the podcast, leave a 5-star rating and a comment, share this episode with a friend, and on social media. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for leadership ideas and tips. Again, thank you for joining me today. Until next time.